Hello, my name is Ryan Green, and welcome to the Last Splash podcast. My guest today is Tom Riordan. Tom is the CEO of WordPower, a consultancy that helps businesses go from 0 to 1 on their AI journey. Tom is also the founder of Sugar-Free Advertising Solutions, helping brands build tools for the cookieless world. He also ran special operations for TubeMogul, a video-focused DSP that I think we have a lot of friends in common with, and I'm pretty sure where I originally met you, Tom.
Yep.
When that platform famously sold to Adobe in 2018, Tom went on to oversee global measurement and strategy for the entire Adobe ad cloud. An expert in our industry, somebody I've wanted to have on for a while. So welcome to the show, Tom.
Thank you, Ryan. Really excited to be here. Appreciate you having me.
And I do want to point out to anybody listening, Tom has a new haircut, a first haircut as a new father. So congratulations on your second child and the beautiful haircut.
Thank you, Ryan. I think it's emblematic of me starting to take control of my life as a dad, hopefully.
Yeah. You say that, but let's be honest. You have a new CEO, and it's not
That's
Tom
correct.
of WordPower. It is your son.
That is correct. Yep.
Well, congratulations, and I would love to hear a little bit more about, and I'm sure the audience wants to hear a little bit more about your background. But I do want to spend the most of today talking about AI applications and marketing. There's so much going on. I'm sure this conversation could take 3 hours, but to focus our time, I think it would be good to kind of talk about your journey and your career. What has led you from the ad tech side to really focusing on artificial intelligence?
Sure. Yeah. So I started agency side at Spark in Chicago. It was a tiny little agency, and I started to develop a reputation as seeking truth, trying to find out the answers to hard questions. I was doing an ad network. RFP, and I was trying to compare all the ad networks and pick the winning ad network. And this one came out of nowhere called TubeMogul that showed all the good, bad, and the ugly. And so I kind of fell in love with this transparent side of advertising. I left the agency world, joined the startup world, and became part of this wild ride. As you mentioned, TubeMogul got acquired by Adobe. And at my time at Adobe, I maybe felt a little less of the energy and the emotion that I felt at a startup environment, something small, kind of living and dying by your mistakes, high growth sort of thing. Adobe has a great operation. Ad Cloud is still a great product, their DSP division. But I kind of felt like it was time for something new and smaller and kind of higher stakes for me personally. So I left Adobe and I started Sugar-Free, and that was an ad tech startup to help advertisers with this cookieless problem. And we had some success with solving that problem, I think, for advertisers for the first couple years, first 2-3 years. As I started to broaden the work that I was doing for advertisers beyond our core software platform, I found myself doing a lot of data science type work. And this is where my AI journey really started beginning. So again, I have this business. I'm outsourcing work to contractors. I'm trying to do some stuff myself. And all of a sudden, ChatGPT 4 gets released. And suddenly the data science abilities of the average human being just become greater than they were before. So my AI journey really began with my own personal business, where projects that used to take weeks or months used to involve me having to outsource work to lots of experts. I was now able to do these things largely myself. I still kept my network of experts. I basically ended up having to go to people and pay them twice as much for less time because I just needed their expertise. But all the doing and the sort of operator work, I found I was able to do with ChatGPT. We're talking about like data science exercises in R, cluster analyses in Python, things that I could describe at a high level, things that I know the value of for advertisers, but had never been able to do myself. So that happened when I was at Sugar-Free, and I just felt this transformation. I felt like the nature of work changing in front of me, and I felt like if I was spending time doing things the old way, that would potentially not be the best use of my time. So I kind of fell in love with this little feeling of magic, and I wanted to bring it to new businesses and help them experience what I had experienced. About middle of last year, towards the end of last year, I started to realize there's a real business to this. So I founded WordPower. And since then, I've been going to targeting mostly mid-sized businesses, maybe some that are a little lighter on staff, and coming to them with the same promise to help them add new abilities and up-level their capabilities, and then remove some of the manual operational style work that they used to have to pay for before.
I saw a crazy stat that only 7% of professionals are using artificial intelligence today, and for as much hype as that we hear about all the time in our world, that seems like such a small percentage. So it maybe can speak to the 93% of people who aren't comfortable using AI tools, or maybe the ones that are just using it to help edit your blog post or
Sure.
to put in a prompt to create an image in Midjourney. What's the first step that to really get into automating tasks, in particular for my audiences, I think is mostly in the marketing and media world? What's the first step that they can take to start streamlining and to get that aha moment that you had a year ago that maybe they're still searching for?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think to your point, there's a lot of people at different phases on their journey. I don't think there's like people who are in, the 93% or the 7% are using it and the 93% aren't, or something like that. More what I experience is like individually, people have different levels of exposure. Like when I was getting my haircut this morning, my hairstylist had used AI herself personally and had a lousy experience before. So she's someone who you might be able to say like has used it or uses it. She had several examples of trying to use it, but she really wasn't getting the value. She wasn't a super user. She was at the point where she might walk away and consider it a failed technology, So you see, I would call that a false start. And I've seen that, when a business goes through that, it can be pretty painful. Like if you make an investment to commit to AI solutions and then you fall on your face, there's potential repercussions of that. There's trade-offs, there's time lost, right? So everyone's at a different spot on their journey. Maybe the first part to answer your question about where to get started is some self-awareness about where you really are. Are you exposed? Are you actually getting value? Do you really use it? There's times at the beginning of my business where I felt I was talking about AI more than I'm using AI. But like now when we get off the phone, I'm literally using it constantly to do all my tasks, and not all my tasks, but many of my tasks, and make my life significantly easier. So I would say I've been someone who's been using it for a while, but now I'm going further down that journey and I'm actually getting value. The first places to start are like if you're not someone who just randomly uses Claude or ChatGPT, the two best models right now, to solve occasional tasks, you could be. I mean, anyone who does knowledge work, text-based work, any sort of copywriting, creating presentations, creating trainings, like typical office work that I just experienced a lot at the agency and Adobe, lots of that can get handled by these platforms. They're amazing at text, right? Like they can read and they can write, and then ChatGPT can do math. Again, like it's an assistant. So like if you are in a creative role, I mean, copywriting is the first place to start. And I'm literally every week meeting with agencies or marketing departments who have heard they could use ChatGPT, or maybe they had that false start. But like, how do I really get it humming so that it writes product copy that looks and feels like my brand attributes and is really compelling? So copywriting. Next big one is analytics. That's a big one. Again, like I just said, these things can do math. Give it your reporting file and ask it to walk you through, your Google Ads reporting or whatever it is. Things that you used to have to wait for a business intelligence analyst or like an analyst on your team to have to do. Now you can do that yourself using the AI. So long-winded answer, but I'd say have some self-awareness about where you're at the journey, and it requires some reflection, and it's not binary. And then from there, start to target some of those lowest hanging fruit use cases that for like a marketing agency, it feels like these tools are built for.
Maybe we could dive a little bit more into the analytics side. I think the copywriting side is I think it's the lowest hanging fruit and what most people are most familiar with.
Yep.
When you ask ChatGPT to analyze a Google Ads report, what are you uploading into that, and what are you cautious about giving maybe too much to an AI tool, depending on the regulations that maybe your company has on use for it? What's a practical way that mid-sized agency or mid-sized brand could use analytics more intelligently with AI tools?
Yeah, two pieces of the question. I'll answer the second half first. Like related to knowing where you are in this journey and like having some self-awareness, if you don't know if you can use your data in one of these platforms, like you need to figure that out, right? Do I have the right to use this data? Is this platform SOC 2 compliant or whatever your constraints are? Are they using this for training? These are questions you can answer. And there are solutions that are privacy safe. There are solutions that maybe are less privacy safe because they use your data for training data. So you have to build an operating framework where you can make those decisions fast. It's not like every time we're going to do analytics, we're wondering, if we have the right to put it somewhere and where we have the right to put it, right? So once you've nailed that piece, then the next thing is, what are the questions that you actually ask it? And this could be all over the place. Totally depends on the type of data. One thing I found is like if your data is kind of boring and there isn't that much to it, like AI is not going to be able to make it that much more interesting for you. But if your data is relatively complex and you as a person can't make sense of it, that's a perfect opportunity for AI to come in and offer some value. Probably the most specific example I'll give you is at Adobe, we did a lot of analysis on television viewership. And we had data scientists who would run a cluster analysis to look at all this TV viewership data and find out what audiences naturally exist. And it's like, hey, what do you know? People who watch Fox News also watch the NFL, and people who watch morning shows also watch Lifetime or like whatever. And we started to develop these. You start to observe these personas in the data. It's really, really hard for a human to do. Impossible, basically, for a human to do that. But the insights you get out of that are super human digestible. To exercise or to run that sort of analysis in the old world took weeks, took people specialized in R and these different programming languages. Now you could literally give that file to ChatGPT, say, hey, I'm totally new to this. I don't even know where to start. Help me go through an audience cluster analysis. It's going to explain to you how to do it start to finish. It's going to give you the results. By the time you're done, you're going to be able to pitch it to your customer like as if you invented the thing. Right? You can go back and ask questions and say, hey, I don't understand what you told me, give me more. From an analytics standpoint, get your operating framework nailed in the first place. And then go ahead and lean on the system to take you down the journey.
Is there types of files that ChatGPT is better at reading than others? Like, can I put in pivot tables?
Yeah, the more human-oriented formatting, the trickier things get. So like formulas and stuff like that could potentially be problematic, or like humans love to like merge cells, but like in a CSV, there's really no reason to merge the cells. You would just label them each appropriately. So a lot of times, I might even make a prompt for someone that's like a transformer that takes their raw reporting and manicures it and like cleans it up, does some stuff so that it's a little bit simpler for the machines to read. Like a year from now, we might have to not have to do that. Sometimes the AI is able to fill in the gaps and not do it. But as you want to operationalize your use of AI, helping it by doing some of these steps, by breaking a complex task into a few pieces, can go a long way. So there's some best practices with that for sure. Generally speaking, CSV files are slam dunk. Text files, Word files are slam dunk.
I will start with CSV files then, because this is where my journey is. I need to get certainly to the analytics part. What are some other areas of focus when you're contracted to look at a business? And a lot of times they're going to come to you maybe with a vague request, like we need to do more with AI. The CEO wants to save money and reduce headcount or whatever. What are some of the areas that you focus when you're evaluating the AI frameworks that you think a specific business should be utilizing?
I always start with an audit. The audit very much has to do with like the tactical opportunity areas, like where can AI help your business? And that creates a map of often like a dozen plus opportunities of small, mid-sized, large areas where AI can actually help a business. But I often find that at that point, it's really not actually enough information to decide what to do next. Even if you can rank those things based on like what's going to help the business the most, because AI is changing so much right now and causing so much change, people are scared of it. And if you roll it out in a funny way, if you don't nail it, if you don't have the right people involved, there's no organizational commitment, it can fall flat. So a lot of times we'll go through a list of what might make the most business sense for a company, but we might have bias towards one or two projects because we know that team is in the right mindset to embrace change and become our champions, right? And help us create what I call an organizational snowball, where we start to build that magic and that love for what we're doing, belief in what we're doing, people who are advocates at the organization, right? It can't just be me telling everyone, hey, you should use AI. So yeah, I'd say it starts with a project list and it starts with what makes sense for the business, but because of all the emotional pieces right now, leaning in on the personnel and like how it's going to feel is just as important.
The politics, I think, is you're also evaluating it. And as somebody who's been at a couple different places, I'm sure that have had some politics and playing that you understand that it's not just about the idea.
Yeah, and there's a reason I'm targeting mid-sized businesses primarily. It's really that I'm targeting businesses who are ready to move fast. and don't want to deliberate for months with their AI committee before they decide they're ready to get their hands dirty with the project, right? So yeah, I think you're reading that right.
And that's something I've heard from a number of SaaS leaders, is that the time that it takes to get a deal done and moving has exponentially increased over the last 5 years. I can't even imagine with an AI based project, because there's the larger companies probably have 6, 7, 8 different stakeholders that need to sign off on it, from the executive to the legal and everybody in between. So that's got to be a little bit of a pain.
Yeah, I'd say that, but there are a lot of businesses who don't have that baggage and who are ready to move fast and have real interesting business problems as well. So again, it feels like there's lots of opportunity. Sugar-free definitely had a long sales cycle, whereas WordPower, I'm able to find businesses, as long as I filter through the more deliberative ones, I'm able to find businesses who feel like they need this yesterday, right? And so it's kind of a cool piece to be a part of.
So you didn't come from a coding or an engineering background, but you did come from a background that was well versed in decisioning on big data sets, I'll say, at least, right? Like, I can remember TubeMogul claiming that they would be able to, their machine learning was going to optimize campaigns better than humans would. And they were right, too. As much as the specialist in me hates to admit it.
I remember having competitions where we would pit our best media trader in San Francisco against the robot, and we would keep score, and it was hard for the humans, for sure.
Oh yeah, I definitely remember TubeMogul University that coming up, and that's even within your organization, where somebody knows all the ins and outs.
Right.
So you've been familiar with the machines winning for a long time, but now what advice would you have for other tech nerds but non-coders that are interested in building out either low or no code AI applications that maybe have a way of describing things and a way of seeing marketing and seeing the world, but now have access to these tools? I think you've answered this a little bit, but what advice specifically would you give to practitioners that want to build their own tools?
The intersection of AI and no code has made it a sweet time to be around. So if you're not familiar with low code or no code, anyone in the audience, it basically just means tools that allow you to achieve the things that you might have had to use programmers for previously, but now using a UI or an interface, right? So this level of abstraction that we operate at, which is kind of like a programmer term, it means just like getting out of the weeds, basically, is pretty high right now. So to design a lightweight piece of software that does something, you can spend a lot of time thinking about the user experience, their needs, and what's really important, which features are nice to haves versus need to haves. There's infinite information on the internet, and again, many of these models have been trained with like 90% of the latest Stack Overflow type information, like all this coding stuff that's floating out there. It's never been more accessible than it is right now. And so where I've come in at Adobe, I did a lot of solution consulting for customers, where I'd help them think through their problems, again, remove the extraneous stuff, focus on the critical pieces, put together a plan for how that needs to happen. That's a lot of the work in product management. And so like, as I'm building solutions out for customers, I didn't always know what was going on under the hood, but what I've found is that because of this new information-enabled era operating at this high abstraction, if I just care about what's going to be awesome for my customers, a lot of the other stuff I can kind of figure out, rely on my experts, my contractors that I work with to fill in those gaps. So it's kind of never been a better time for the knowledge curious. The information is out there, the tools are out there. It's a good time to thrive.
And a lot of knowledge workers that are scared about their career in 10 years maybe need to hop on this train, because this is an opportunity for them to be able to upskill for sure.
Yeah, it might just be what's expected of you. We might all be expected to be capable technologists, and when new things come out and there's public information available, we're expected to learn them. Right now, that makes you a standout at your business, right? But that might just kind of become the norm in the future.
I could definitely see that happening. There's a lot of headwinds and uncertainty on the marketing side, obviously, today. From your viewpoint, what's the biggest challenge that the marketing and advertising industry is facing? And are any of those challenges solvable by AI or exacerbated, I guess, by some of the generative AI products that are out there?
Yeah, tough question for sure. I think maybe the biggest problem, you know that meme where it's like a roller coaster and you start in the first phase and you think something simple and then you're like an intermediate and you learn more about a topic and you start having complex opinions and then you end up on the other side where you again have simple opinions once you spend a tremendous amount of time on a subject. I think our industry is towards the tail end of that middle hump right now. Like it used to be about creative audience, like the ads and who you were going to serve them to was like much of the problem that you're worrying about. Then we added like attribution and performance, and anyone who's worked with me in marketing knows I'm like definitely an attribution person. But maybe I'm going over this hump too, where once you get to the other side and you realize truth is obfuscated in marketing. Like you will never know exactly how much every part of your campaign is contributing. You cannot control these ad campaigns to the exact degree that you want to, right? Like 90% of their success has to do with the ads, the history of the brand, right? Like the people that you serve them to. And then a lot of these metrics, which of course you got to rely on the pros to run your campaigns well, don't get me wrong. But like a lot of these metrics we've cared just too much about. Like I've spent time on panels debating like viewability versus attention. It's like your heart's in the right spot, but like your business isn't going to change based on that one micro decision. So I'm not trying to say ad tech isn't important. I'm not trying to say attribution isn't important. I'm not trying to say advanced measurement isn't important. But once we're getting to this other side of the hump, which we are, like the data infrastructure is shrinking, the amount of information that we can have access to track people is declining. It seems like it's going to continue to go that way, right? So you will have a harder time figuring out if your ads are working in the future. So what do? Worry about if your ads are good and wonder about who you're serving them to again, you know, and have a lot of faith in all the other operators that you've put along the process. So I think that's going to be hard for some people because like a lot of people, again, I was kind of making a career myself over like, you need to measure every dollar that you spend. That just doesn't seem like it's possible. You know, like the independent internet is going to win and you'll be able to measure your entire buy across the trade desk from YouTube to, you know, like it's not going to happen. So now what are you going to do in this world where you have to make pragmatic decisions amidst all these constraints? You're probably just going to worry about normal ad stuff. So I think that's the biggest challenge is like, what do we do with all the time that we're spending on all that other stuff, you know, or where does that work kind of fit if the CMO and like the media department really just care about awesome ads?
I think it puts the brands in an odd space too, because for the last 10 years, they've been saying we can attribute everything down to a tenth of a penny on every touch point that happens. And that was probably a little bit of a fool's errand before and certainly is now. I think it's just tough for marketing departments to go to their executives and say we were wrong for 10 years.
I think you're totally right.
So we've put them, agencies and ad tech folks, in a little bit of a bad spot. So I hope we can be very supportive and find ways to get out some of the inefficiencies there. Like you shouldn't be paying 2/3 of your open exchange buys into ad tax in this situation. If on the other side of the hill, I think that does mean some reduction of some ad tech, at least. In particular, if you look at certainly data aggregators probably, but also ad verification. You were talking about viewability versus sentiment. There's a little bit of a food fight right now. Some of the analytics reports that came out and some lawsuits that are happening in the background. I don't know if you follow any of this stuff anymore, but it's pretty funny to see everybody pointing the gun at each other.
I'm smiling because I don't actually know exactly what you're talking about. My X feed is morphed to like 90% AI content instead of marketing content now, so I'm slightly insulated from the trade.
You've moved on. It's probably for the best for everybody. You may have just answered this, but I'll ask the question anyways. What is something that you've changed your mind about since starting your career? It sounds like you've changed your mind about attribution and measurement a little bit, but what else?
I mean, it's kind of related. I mean, I would say I've moved away from obsession with truth seeking. Like when I was RFPing ad networks at Spark, like I said, I was like, there's got to be a best one in them. There was no best ad network, but there might have been one or two that the whole situation would have been best for my customer. And so like rather than being right, trying to be helpful is something that like the more time I've spent in the business, the more I've tried to focus on. There's no winners and losers in marketing or AI. Like every day is hard. Focusing on just like improving a difficult situation rather than being right, or getting it perfect or dunking on someone or anything like that. Not that I really have a history of dunking on people, but just a mentality away from truth seeking towards being helpful.
That couldn't have been said better. I feel if I would have tried to make that statement, that would have taken me 6 minutes. It took you 30 seconds.
I thought I flubbed it, so thank you.
No, you didn't. You did not flub it. What are you most excited about now that you're a new father and you're getting ready to somewhat formally launch this business? It sounds like you've had it for a while. They don't even have a website up, which
New website coming soon. Yep.
Commend you for. Honestly, just start doing the work and figure out the rest of it later. What are you most excited about?
Work is changing. The future of work is going to be different than the present of work. Personally, my career looks very different than it did when I worked at large companies. And I see a lot of people in my network migrating that way too. I mean, look at yourself. Like you've become an entrepreneur now. You're starting to create rather than exist as part of another organization. I think there'll be a continued migration towards that. For me, I do want to build a business and hire people, full time. But I think a lot of people will stay as like independent operators or kind of smaller units, and I think that's cool. So I think work is changing in front of us. COVID was related to that. AI is only going to accelerate that. These solopreneurs and these smaller businesses can do more with less than they ever could before. And to tie it to your mention about me being a father, like I think about what that means for my son. What is he going to go to a traditional four-year college? Is he ever going to have to learn anything about coding? Is it going to be so abstract? Like our computer is going to be so abstracted that you talk to it like a person? I don't really know. I think of 18 years from now when like we're starting to think about that sort of stuff. It seems likely to me that the world sort of breaks into two halves, like people who are technology experts of managing AI and computers and all that sort of stuff, and then people who are true domain experts, like really know marketing or really know perfume or pizzas or retail or whatever other category it is. It wasn't like that for me growing up. Like we could do both of those things, right? It wasn't so. But it almost feels like your ability to go deep and become a domain expert on some really specific thing might be the only thing that really differentiates you from technology long term. Like for the technology to work for you, you do have to kind of have some perspective that it does not. So long-winded way of saying I feel the world changing literally right now in front of me, and I'm trying to skate to where the puck is going, to use a way overused phrase. And I'm excited about that. I'm nervous about that, just the same.
Yeah, I think that sums it up quite well for, I'm sure, the thoughts of a lot of the audience and certainly mine as well. So anything else you'd like to add?
No, that's it, man. I think it's super rad that you chose a breeder's reference for your business name, and I'm proud to be one of the few people who picked that out. So appreciate that, man. Rock on.
I appreciate it. I will try to bring, some upper millennial Gen Xers that will understand the reference. But now Olivia Rodrigo has the breeders opening for her. So wow. I think the Gen Zers probably will start to see the reference, or at least understand the inspiration that some of their top artists have seen as well.
That is amazing. That's very cool. But yeah, jokes aside, I do dig what you're doing at the Last Splash. So appreciate you having me on the pod, man.
Thanks, Tom. I appreciate your time today, and we'll have you on soon.
All right, cool. Take care, Ryan. See ya.